What's up, guys? Welcome back to Otherwood Games. My name is Thomas, and today I figured we would just kind of talk through some of the factions of 40k, talk through some light lore. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but I also thought it'd be kind of cool to go onto the Warhammer web store, just kind of check out some of the models for each one, since, in my opinion, aesthetics is probably the most important thing. So just seeing some of the, professionally painted models there, kind of what they have to offer and that sort of thing. So, yeah, I think we'll just go ahead and get right into it. So let me switch on over to the other screen here, so that way we can kind of check some stuff out. So yeah, on the web store, we're going to be just kind of taking a look through the different armies and that sort of thing. So we'll start with the armies of the Imperium. And one thing I'm not the biggest fan of when clicking through the website is just the filters, because sometimes if you click off of it the wrong way, you'll end up having to start all over with your different stuff. So we'll just kind of go in order and kind of talk it out. So starting with Adeptus Sororitas, so Sisters of Battle, as most people are likely going to refer them as. Basically just battle nuns, and honestly their aesthetic is super cool. So we have like the Paragon war suits, these sort of battle suits. The Sacrosancts and some of their other models also have basically this lighter power armor, similar to what you would see on Space Marines, but obviously a little bit more femmed up, and just a really cool aesthetic, and just this overall sort of Catholic kind of cathedral vibe on all of their tanks and their characters and that sort of thing. But then you also have these sort of grotesque kind of models as well. So the Flagellants and the Penitent Engines, basically people that are seeking repentance and willing to fight the good fight, quote unquote good fight, in order to get there. And yeah, just honestly, all their models are so good, such fantastic sculpts, and really just an interesting army altogether. They kind of use these fate dice, which allows you to kind of replace die that you roll with better results, and roll them kind of as you play the game, which is honestly a very cool sort of overarching theme. Their whole idea is having faith in the Emperor, and they're rewarded for that by use of the fate dice. So looking over to Custodes now. So basically the Emperor's Guard, his highest form of warrior, the Golden Boys, the Banana Boys, as many people call them. Really cool army. Definitely one of the cheapest armies you can run. Their range is somewhat small. You'll see they have quite a few kits, but a lot of these are basically kits that swap in and out with one another. So basically one kit can make a few of them. But overall, sort of this more gladiator type aesthetic. A lot of their stuff is not available right now, but also a lot of them are the expert kits, the resin kits, which are not ideal, but a lot of it is coming over into plastic now. So if you like kind of chunky models, maybe some heavier armor, and honestly just overall just a pretty solid army, the Custodes may be for you. Like I said, they're super cheap. Their combat patrol is something like 500 or 600 points just in that box alone. And with how you can configure the different kits, you can actually squeeze out between two boxes a little over 1,000 points. So if that's something that you're into, trying to save some money, that's definitely a way to go. Going from most expensive to probably one of the least expensive to arguably most expensive in Adeptus Mechanicus. We have these really cool models, basically just a way that they can, they sort of are just replacing parts of themselves with different mechanical things. They worship the machine god. They believe in an Omnissiah, which some of them believe that to be the Emperor himself. Others don't necessarily believe that and are just using the Imperium to fund their research. But as you can see, this guy's almost completely machine. His right arm looks like it may be a little bit still organic, but really cool, sort of steampunk, moving into a little bit of diesel punk territory. These guys are probably my favorite, the Iron Striders. It's just a cool walker model, and I am a sucker for that sort of thing. Their tank as well, super cool. We'll see a similar shape to this when we get to the Imperial Guard. Kind of an interesting thing across all kits, but a lot of times within the factions themselves, you'll see, or the overarching faction, so like Armies of the Imperium, Chaos, and Xenos, you'll kind of see some crossover between them that sort of allows you to see where they get some of their bits and that sort of deal. So speaking of Astra Militarum, the Imperial Guard, we'll try and find that kit I was just mentioning. The Scout Sentinel, yeah, so that shape very clearly is also in that walker we were just looking at. But Imperial Guard is basically humanity. So if you're looking at basically playing as the normies, basically humans that are taking up the cause or defending really the life that, what little life they have, this would be the army for you. So you can have sort of these horde army where you're just a bunch of soldiers on foot or on cavalry on horseback, fighting against basically horrors beyond belief, or you can go more of an artillery side, or even if we scroll a little further into sort of vehicles. So the Hammer of the Emperor, just a bunch of tanks, walkers, machines, just war machines, which if I were to play guard, I would definitely be doing more of the vehicles and tanks and that sort of thing. I just find that to be a little bit of a more fun way to play, I think. Kind of pushing around the big tanks and that sort of thing. That would be what I would lean into if I were more guard. I have a horde army with Tyranids, so I don't really want another one of those, honestly. It can be quite a lot of work, but it is rewarding to see all of your models kind of laid out on the table. A lot of fun to play in that style as well. Moving on to Imperial Agents. So one thing about Imperial Agents is that it is sort of a mixed bag. So you're able to, like with other armies of the Imperium, you can kind of ally in units, but Agents kind of takes that to the nth degree, allowing you to bring in a lot of other, agents of the Imperium and bring those in. Their combat patrol features a lot of different independent units, different characters, and that sort of thing with a lot of different abilities. But as you can see, we have a little bit of tie-in with, the Sororitas, some Space Marine stuff, more Sororitas, where they can kind of bring in different members of different kill teams and the like to basically beef up who they actually have on the field. Honestly, there's a lot of really cool models in Imperial Agents. In my personal opinion, it's not really something I would go after right now. It's just not a range that is fully developed, and there are just some things where it would be nice to be able to have more identity within the faction that would basically feel like you're playing more of like a cohesive unit, a cohesive military, than having just sort of these single characters or these groups from different factions kind of coming in to help. From a lore perspective or like a narrative perspective, it's a really cool idea. I just don't know if the range itself really lends itself to the style of play that I think they're really wanting just yet. But I definitely think it's something to look out for if you like that idea of kind of mishmashing different parts of the Imperium together. Definitely a cool way to go. And lastly, for specifically armies of the Imperium, before we get into Space Marines, is Imperial Knights. So if you like the idea of rocking these massive, diesel punk kind of mechs on the battlefield, this would be the army for you. You get not a super wide array of ones to build, but just a lot of interesting ways to build them. Really cool modeling and painting space to be able to really customize these the way that you would want. Obviously, you can go into the full households, the lore, paint them up exactly how it says within the lore, or you can go out of left field, paint them however you want. and that sort of thing. With this, since there are fewer models, it can tend to lean toward one of the cheaper armies to build and play. But you are going to be building, 2 to 3 of these big guys and then a few of these little ones, just to kind of field those. And you may end up dipping into some of the other armies of the Imperium just to get some foot troops to be able to maneuver around and that sort of thing. But overall, pretty cool. I really like the aesthetic of the knights. If I were to play knights, it would probably be Chaos Knights. But the Imperial Knights, I prefer the Armigers over the War Dogs, which are basically the Chaos versions of these kits. I kind of like these guys a little bit more, just aesthetically speaking. But I think there's a lot more kit bashing potential with Chaos Knights, which is kind of where I would like to go next. So that's the armies of the Imperium. So we'll keep it in line with the good guys of the 40k universe and move into Space Marines. Now, obviously, we could dive into all the different ones here, but we're just kind of looking at from an overarching perspective today. With Space Marines, we will just click on Ultramarines, so that way we get basically the basic boys outside of some of the characters, which luckily they kind of start out first. So Space Marines, you're going to have guys in this power armor, and basically that's the overall vibe. They are kind of just they are meant to be more of a elite force, so they're not typically meant to be more horde oriented. They're supposed to be more elite. You can get pretty deep into specifics on your actual unit size, how many models and how many captains, how many intercessors, how many assault squads, and that sort of thing. You can get really finite into the lore on exactly what your company would look like, or you can just play 2,000 points of your favorite armored guys. There's a ton of different sculpts and a ton of different layouts that you can do. You can go into more melee with something like Blade Guard or Assault Intercessors. You can be a little bit sneaky into the Phobos units like Eliminators, Infiltrators, and the like. You can even go more tank-centric with Repulsors, Predators, and that sort of thing. You can even get a little bit, you can't do like a full army, at least not at 2,000 points of like Dreadnoughts, at least with standard Marines. You can technically do it with like Space Wolves, since they do have a character that is a Dreadnought. But in my opinion, the Dreadnoughts are super cool. Outside of that, I prefer the Gravis armor. So like the Inceptors, I believe we already passed the Eradicators. And then my favorite unit, sorry for all the scrolling, is going to be the Aggressors, these guys. I don't know why, I just really love the way these guys look. My units are the Flamer version, so they don't have the missile packs on top, but they just have flame gauntlets instead of these bolt storm ones. And then you have stuff like the Centurions and that sort of thing. So overall, a lot of different ideas of what you can do, a lot of different directions that you can go. You can definitely find your way in to different areas if you go Space Marines, because they just have such a wide range that you can very easily find yourself kind of pushing into different directions and having a very unique force over time. Granted, a lot of times you're going to be sticking with your particular chapter. So if you went like Ultramarines, there's not a lot of opportunity, I would say, for tons of unique painting. It's more so picking characters to be able to pick out some really cool details and the like. But for the most part, you're likely going to, unless you're, your homebrew or your personal chapter that you want to do is a bunch of different colors, or if you wanted to do something like Death Watch, which would allow you to kind of have the one shoulder pad for their current chapter and then the rest in black, is another option. But that would be, in my opinion, one of the downsides to Space Marines, because that's what I'm finding with mine, is I'm just kind of like, there's not a lot of room for me to be able to really customize them in a way. And I really like being able to pick and choose certain things and be able to kind of change things up. So like I was just saying with Death Watch, let's just look at those real quick. So with Death Watch, I think that's all the specific units. Typically we'll just pull this up in a new tab. I think they have these with the different shoulder pads painted on. So yeah, as you can see, so we have a Ultramarine here, a Dark Angel, Imperial Fist, Space Wolf, probably a White Scar. So you can kind of get a little bit of an idea. Like you can have these sort of with Death Watch, because effectively they're pulled from their chapter in order to serve under this, either as punishment or for honor. And you know, you can kind of customize them this way. I believe this kill team actually comes with the sculpted shoulder pads. Like that one's very clearly sculpted. But if you wanted to build the individual, you know, different kill teams and that sort of thing to play, you could customize a little bit deeper more what you would want. But then also just kind of clicking through some of the other, like you have Codex compliant. So that would be like Ultramarines and Salamanders, Imperial Fists. Basically, these are ones that you're able just to use off of the Codex, and like basically all their rules are within the Codex. But then there are ones that are not Codex compliant. So that would be like the Dark Angels, Blood Angels, Black Templars, Space Wolves, and Grey Knights. So these are ones that have very specific rules, and they have, you know, an added Codex supplement that allows you to play their specific characters. So for Black Templars, for example, like High Marshal Helbrecht would be in the Black Templar. Right now it's indexed because they don't have their Codex yet, but it would not be in the Space Marines Codex. You would have to, index is free. When they get their Codex, his new data sheet will be in that Codex. So if you do the non-compliant Marines, you might be able to play for a little while without actually purchasing the full-on Codex. But eventually, in order to get all the updated sheets and everything, you will have to buy that Codex, which is a downside. But we'll kind of go through some of the different aesthetics of these non-compliant ones, because it is slightly different than what you would see with standard Marines, and maybe gives you a little bit more freedom and some new ways that you can kind of do that. So with the Black Templars, their whole thing is crusading. They're on a forever crusade. The reason they're not compliant is because effectively they want to be able to have as many Marines as possible. So they actually induct people as they go through different systems. And when we look at where's their Crusader squad, the guys that don't have helmets are like neophytes. So they are ones that have recently joined and have not attained the rank to be able to get power armor. And then the other guys are sort of tutoring them, if you could call it that, on the battlefield. But overall, their aesthetic it's like Crusade. I mean, it's like Crusaders. It would be cool if they had I think it'd be cool if they had more like the Crusader Great Helms as an aesthetic choice. But as you can see as well, the reason there's Ultramarine stuff is because you will have access to most of the other generic Space Marine units to add to it. But they have specific more melee options and that sort of thing. So they're more Crusade-like. Blood Angels dip into sort of a vampiric kind of gothic aesthetic. They suffer from what's known as the Black Rage. Effectively, it's sort of like vampirism, but if they lose control for a little bit, they become bloodthirsty and pretty gnarly. And yeah, if you're into that kind of lore, or just their overall aesthetic with the kind of angelic nature, their Primarch past was killed in battle defending Terra, and they kind of mourn for him very greatly because to them he was a very good leader. It's not the case for all the chapters, but really interesting aesthetic. I know some people aren't the biggest fans of some of the newer kits, which is unfortunate. I mean, that's just, it really is bad when you get like a new kit and it's not really well received. But that is unfortunately just kind of the nature of it, right? It is a visual hobby, and there are going to be things that you don't really like. And even though they share angels, they are quite different between Blood and Dark Angels. So Blood Angels are more sort of gothic vampire, whereas Dark Angels are more Arthurian legends. Arthurian legends. So they have their Primarch back, Lionel Johnson, very stoic, very commanding Primarch character. Super cool sculpt, and painted up is just incredible. And then I learned recently, so these little guys, I think they're called Watchers, but they are just like manifestations. And it's believed that they're like the manifestations of like the secrets that the Dark Angels hold, because the Dark Angels aren't Codex compliant because basically they use sort of forbidden technology, or technology forbidden within the Empire, to be a little bit more strong. But really cool. I mean, you get this like, their hooded aesthetic is so sick. Like, they just have such really fascinating models, with these sort of draping hoods and chivalry, cavalry, that sort of thing. Just like really interesting aesthetic overall. Very cool. They were my second choice. So if I hadn't gone Salamanders, I probably would have gone Dark Angels. And then Grey Knights. So Grey Knights are technically Space Marines, but they are specifically designed, I guess you could say, but their whole ordeal is to defeat demons. So they're pretty much the mainline defense against chaos armies. Really cool newer models. So like Castellan Crow is really cool. But the rest of their army right now, at least, is pretty outdated. They recently got teased with a new combat patrol, which people aren't really receiving super well because there's no new sculpts in it. In fact, it includes this Venerable Dreadnought, which is the oldest Dreadnought. It just seems odd to me that like this faction is actually pretty well loved from what I can tell. Anyone that plays them really likes playing them and really likes the lore and the characters and everything. And it's kind of a shame that it doesn't seem like, at least right now, they're going to be getting anything before 10th edition is done. They are getting an update to their... actually, I just realized it's not on here right now. So they must have taken it down. But they also have the dreaded baby carrier, which is the Dread Knight, which is effectively a like mech that like carries them, but it like carries basically a guy that's in power armor, like in a baby Bjorn, basically. So it's kind of called the baby carrier, unfortunately. And it has like it's going to get like an upgrade sprue to be able to make a like character version of it, which is fine. But I think for them to have such outdated models here and to receive something that no one was really asking for, just feels, it a little bit feels bad, I think. I think if I were them, I would probably be pretty upset. And then the last of the non-codex compliant Space Marines is the Space Wolves. And they just got a pretty major refresh, which is really cool. So we have like the Njal Stormcaller, the Wolf Priest, such a sick model, with like the wolf skull and the hood and just all that. And that's like their sort of reanimation unit. So if it's leading a unit, it's able to bring back models, which is just super strong ability. Then you have Arjek Rockfist, which I'm surprised they don't show his, in my opinion, better sculpt or better option, which is him like throwing the hammer. Like, I don't know why they wouldn't have led with that. Like, the box art has it, which just really cool. I mean, I know it's like Thor and whatever, but you know, they are effectively space Vikings, is their whole thing. similar to the Blood Angels being like the vampire deal. I guess everything is Twilight when you really break it down. These guys are kind of like werewolves. They jokingly are called furries. I honestly, I haven't actually played a Space Wolves player. Or no, that's not true. I have played a Space Wolves player. They are pretty brutal. I'm not gonna lie. But I really love their aesthetic, their scheme. Like that light blue looks so good on the tabletop, and especially if you contrast it with the bright yellow. And then you can see on these guys a little bit. They also use these like red triangles, sort of geometric, on top of their more organic like pelts and that sort of thing. Really cool vibe. Really cool. Honestly, if I didn't look like a typical Space Wolves player, I might consider playing them. But usually when I mention that I play 40K, people ask if I play Space Wolves. Something about the long hair, I guess. But as you can see, they have more character and specific dreadnoughts, which would allow you to build into at least 1,000 points. You could probably get away with 2,000 points. I don't know their specific points value off the top of my head, but if you played every one of the available dreadnoughts, I would imagine you would be getting pretty close. I wonder what they have that's out of stock, because I think they probably have some cool models down here. So you have the Wolfen. These guys are actually in their new Combat Patrol coming soon. You have the Hounds of Mordecai, which look like a Reaver squad. And then their dice. So yeah, honestly, Space Wolves, pretty cool. I mean, seriously, like they have really great sculpts now. You're not playing with really stubby Marines anymore. Like they brought it, back, and it just looks really good. But that does it for the Imperium. I think it makes sense just to go to Chaos next. And yeah, we'll just kind of click through each of these. Since I talked about Knights before, we'll start with them. They just got this new Knight, the Knight Ruinator, which effectively is like extra sprue on their bigger Knight kits. So basically this kit will build any of the big Knights. Chaos Knights is different than Imperial Knights in that, with Imperial Knights, you pretty much have to run the big Knights and the little ones, but now with the new codex, there's actually a detachment that allows you to have one of these become a character to lead, which I think is kind of cool, in a new way to play, but apparently it's not really seen as cool in the community, just because of how the game is played. Having a bunch of these like smaller knights that are able to move much faster and get around the table in a much more efficient way than the bigger knights actually makes it a pretty dominating force, at least in casual tables. I think they're doing well on like the competitive side of things. I don't think they're like top 5 or top 10, but they are doing well in that front. And it could be their codex is still kind of new, so people are figuring out how to play them still. But overall, I think it's actually a pretty cool looking army. Allows for a lot of kit bashing options. They have a few that are still these expert kits that you can get into if that's sort of your thing, but honestly you can get away with just the normal vibe and play it that way. But yeah, Chaos Knights, really cool. And then Chaos Demons. So this is sort of pretty much the last of the 40k armies that you can run as in 40k as well as Age of Sigmar, because the models are effectively shared. They did kind of tweak this. They updated the index for Chaos Demons. There is a rumor, and take that with what you will. There is a rumor that Chaos Demons is making its way out of 40,000 and will only be in 40k or in Age of Sigmar. And basically what will evolve is you can still be able to use the models, but maybe not as it is now. Because right now, Chaos Demons, you can basically run any of the demons kind of all together, and they get the different aspects of their Chaos God. So all the Nurgle units get Nurgle's ability, all the Khorne units get Khorne's ability, so on and so forth, to be able to interact with the battlefield in unique ways, which is honestly is a pretty cool way to play. I've played a few different Chaos Demons players, and it can be a pretty rough matchup, just depending on what they pick. Because I think it's Slaanesha's. No, I think it's Tzeentch's is like -1 to hit, which can be pretty gnarly if you're more of a shooting army, which is why I run the stuff that makes it so I ignore those modifiers, which is to the bane of my friends. But, it's I have to be able to shoot, so I have to be able to get around that. So yeah, take the rumor with a grain of salt, but really fantastic models. AOS has, in my opinion, AOS does have the better models. So if you're into this aesthetic, I definitely think it's worth looking into, at least. Maybe watch the rumor engines and that sort of thing, and maybe try and find one of the other Chaos Legions, which we'll get into, to lean towards. So that way, if they do nix Chaos Demons, you can still use these models with your chosen faction, or you can use them for other things as well. But looking over to Chaos Space Marines, so the unaligned, so similar-ish to regular Space Marines, you have these like unaligned. So these are Chaos Space Marines. They are able to kind of dip into some of the data sheets of the other legions, but not to the extent that you would be able to if you went full on one of those. But you can also play without the others, and you can find like some of the other characters and that sort of thing that would be available to you with just Chaos Space Marines. But yeah, they have really interesting models. I prefer their bikes. I think their bikes, they're super old, but there's just something about like it being a chopper in like the 41st millennia that I just think is really cool. I mean, and it fits with like the kind of idea of them. They're a little bit edgy, I think, especially if you're just doing Chaos Space Marines. It's a bit more edgy than like actually leaning into one of the other four. But overall, Chaos, like Marines wise, it's just not really something I don't see myself getting into. If I were, it probably would be Death Guard, just because there is a lot of uniqueness to them. They have more of the mutations and that sort of thing that you're able to pick out and paint, and it seems like it could be a little bit more fun of an army to play, and to build and paint and that sort of thing. So you also get Mortarion, which is honestly one of the best sculpts in 40k. I mean, he is just super cool, massive model. But yeah, Death Guard is, forever plagued. That's kind of their whole deal. And obviously my favorite color is green, so I'm more likely to lean toward the green faction, but just I really like the way that they look, and I think they have some of the better sculpts altogether. So if I were to lean one way in the Chaos thing, it'd probably be them. Emperor's Children, obviously still a new faction, like brand new, months old at this point. So really what they need is just more models, more unique models for them, which will probably come next edition. Or if they happen to get a Christmas Battle Force box, might see a new model there. Not likely, just because they had a release this year, a release box and that sort of thing. Overall, super small. Fulgrim is pretty cool. I think he looks really sick, but not really, overall, not really my jam. Thousand Suns would be another one I would consider. I do think that the Rubric Marines and sort of their like teal and gold is very cool if I were to truly paint it in that way. To be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of Magnus the Red from a like model perspective. Just not really my kind of what I would look for in a big centerpiece model. I would probably more likely do the Demonkin and do like a Lord of Change or a Kairos Fate Weaver, just because I kind of like the way that they look. I like that sort of really alien and mutated kind of look with a good dose of fantasy mixed in. I also think the Zinch Demons are more of the aesthetic that I like. And then World Eaters. So my main like rival at my shop is a World Eaters player. I won't lie. So I have some opinions on them, but honestly, it's a pretty fantastic army. If all you want to do is get up close and personal and beat the tar out of your opponent, this is the army for you. They are hands down one of the best melee armies in the game. And honestly, with how terrain works in 10th edition, melee armies are really good right now. So it's not terrible idea to look at that from a meta perspective. I don't think they're doing super well, but on most casual tables, from what I've seen, at least at our shop, it's a pretty solid army. But yeah, and honestly, like I do like their berserkers. I think their just overall look is really good. Their sculpts all have a lot of energy to them, and there's not a lot. Like when you look at these guys, you can kind of tell there's some sculpts that look like they were just kind of flipped over one another, or potentially even just the same sculpt, just with some different arms. But because of all the different options that you have that you can kind of customize them with, it makes it so you can have a pretty unique force that isn't inherently like, oh yeah, these are the two same sculpts, these two are the same. Those two are likely the same, just at different angles. And then those two as well might be the same, but it's not really going to look like that on the table, because you're just able to pick so many different things for them. But yeah, that does it for Imperium and Chaos. Now my personal favorite, apparently. I didn't expect it to be, but it definitely became it. The Xenos. I don't know. There's just something about like, it feels like you can be more free with the Xenos, and I think that's what I like more about them. Like the lore and just how people interact with these armies. You just have more freedom over how you paint them, and even to some extent like kit bashing them, you're kind of able to do more with them, and I think that's why I'm kind of drawn to them more. And maybe it's just because I've gotten really tired of painting Space Marines, and a lot of the Imperium is Space Marine adjacent, and a lot of Chaos is like just Space Marines with spikes and trim. But anyway, getting off of that small tangent, starting with Eldari. So Eldari is actually an army I've been kind of looking at for potentially a new army to replace Space Marines, because I kind of want like a Skittles army, so something I can do like a lot of different colors in, and just kind of enjoy painting again. So as you can see, they have some pretty unique sculpts. Some of this kind of dips into Drukhari territory as well, and you also have like the Harlequins, which are fascinating. I don't want to do Harlequins because I know I'm gonna want to do like the diamonds, like they have on the paint schemes, and it's kind of like their thing, their sort of carnival-esque kind of beings. But I really like just their generic armor. I think it looks really good, and you can paint it up in really cool ways. Obviously, like the one thing that leans me away from them is like when I say Skittles army, like I kind of want to pick all the colors, but when you look at, so you have these guys, the Blades of Cain, the Storm Guardians are red, the Guardian Defenders are red, these guys are like bone and green, and when you look at them or watch them, like if you watch like someone play them, a lot of times if they follow sort of the lore, then your Warp Spiders are red, your Fire Dragons are like red and orange, and they all kind of are these colors. And what I would be worried about is like, because these defenders look very similar to these Blades of Cain, people are going to think, like, if I painted my Guardians green, they're going to think, oh, those are Blades of Cain. I'm like, no, they're Guardians. And it's like, oh, well, they're green like Blades of Cain. I was like, I know, but I just chose to paint them green. You know what I mean? It just feels like it could be like an unfortunate gotcha, or it could be like someone plays me and they had a really weird experience with like someone that played a lot of these like Blades of Cain. So they're like, okay, the green guys we kill, so they just hunt down all of my Storm Guardians. So all my like battle line guys just get picked up because they think they're this stronger unit. So I don't know. I haven't fully decided yet. I might still go with Eldari. I think there are a lot of cool sculpts. I really love the Wraith Guard and the Wraith Blades. If I can get away with just running as many of them as possible, it's a very likely contender, because these sculpts are just so cool. Obviously, I really like mechs and that sort of thing, and these guys are apparently like souls trapped within constructs, or something kind of cool like that. So yeah, Eldari, really cool. One of the oldest, like age-wise, in the lore. They are kind of one of the earliest known species of the universe. So there is kind of a cool thing there. And then Eldari's kind of gothic cousins, the Drukhari. So basically take Eldari, make it kind of Dune meets pirates, and you have Drukhari. Honestly, really cool models. Like the Incubi, I mean, so sick. Their Raiders are really cool as well. I'm not a fan of these guys, the Talos Chronos, or like their Grotesques. The Mandrakes are even kind of cool. But yeah, I think there's like some room here that I think would be cool. They don't have as many of the like color limitations, I think, that Eldari might. But as of right now, they're just Index. So we'll see. I do think whatever army I decide to go with, I'm probably just going to wait until at least next year to know what the plan is for 11th edition. Because the last thing I want to do is to go, all in on an army this late in an edition and then finish it like by the beginning of next year, just to find out that like 11th edition is starting and I'm basically just going to be starting over from scratch. So we'll see which way I go. But Drukhari, honestly, very cool. Genestealer cults. I probably wouldn't do Genestealer cults personally, but they are sort of a horde army. I really like the lore behind them because they tie in with one of my armies, the Tyranids. So effectively, the Tyranids in their Vanguard kind of invasion, they send forward Lictors and Genestealers to kind of gather intel on the planet. And then once the Hive Fleet gets close enough, the Hive Mind is able to connect and learn everything that they know. But specifically, the Genestealers go in and abduct people from communities and from different areas. A lot of times, even in like the mining kind of blue collar worker spheres, to basically plant their seed with them, and they slowly start to kind of get mixed into the actual blood of those around them. And then they also prophesy that like a great cleansing is coming. Effectively, the end is coming, but like you can side with us and have salvation and become part of the hive mind, kind of that sort of thing. Like they are a cult, and they are able to like rise up and be able to pick people to join them. So their whole thing is like they're all mutated because of the alien DNA that's now mixed within them, or they're like somewhat normal people that have joined the cause of the Genestealer cults and that sort of thing. And they get access to these like mining vehicles and that sort of deal. I think their vehicle aesthetic is kind of cool. I think it'd be interesting if they expanded on that a bit. Maybe gave them more like mining rigs, or maybe even like some kind of like civilian kind of vehicles. I mean, you have the Jackals, I think it is. Yeah, the Jackals, which are on like dirt bikes and ATVs. And then you have a character Jackal. Um, so I think from that side of things, I kind of like the Gene Stealers, but even as a Tyranids player, I'm not the biggest fan of Gene Stealers, like the unit itself. So kind of makes sense that I'm not the biggest fan aesthetically of the Gene Stealers, but their lore is really cool. Something that this is an army, Leagues of Votan, however you want to pronounce it. This is an army that I am keeping my eye on, because honestly, if they get a decent expansion for, before 10th edition is done, when they get their codex, looks like, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it looks like they took the index cards off. So I'm wondering if this is coming soon. A little speculation there, but I like their aesthetic. I like their armor. I think it's really cool. Their characters kind of have, these are the same character, but you're able to build them in different ways. But with like the runes and that sort of thing, sort of power armor, but like with enough interest. Like these heavier guys are so cool. I love this. Is just everything. Even their like vehicles, this like turtle shell kind of thing, this like really segmented armor, I just think is really cool. And I think this is a contender for like my Skittles army, because I do think they could look cool and cohesive with a bunch of different colors on the board, and I think it would just be a really neat army to do that with. One thing I'm not the biggest fan of is I don't think every kit is able to swap heads to have helmets, and I just don't like no helmets. Like I just would prefer all my guys to have helmets, because it's just sort of the aesthetic that I like. And my thing is if you're in the middle of war, you should probably be wearing your helmet. If you can't tell, I'm definitely the mom friend in my groups of friends. Necrons. Necrons was an army that I was considering in the beginning. Like the Shard of the Void Dragon is such a cool model. I love the more freaky of their characters. Like the ones that, I mean, they're still humanoid, obviously, but like the actual literal like skull, like Terminator kind of looking ones aren't really my favorite look. I would rather have like more of these like kind of out there looking ones, like the Canoptic, these destroyers, even the Hexmark, like with his like spider eyes, also known as the Gloctopus in our shop. The Wraiths, like this is more the aesthetic I wish they would lean into. I don't think they would necessarily will, because I think the like warrior is more so the aesthetic they want for their army altogether, is just sort of these like lumbering, fully humanoid, kind of living constructs. But I do think even the Praetorians and the Lich Guard are really cool, with their a little bit different aesthetic. It's just like these would be the ones I would probably play more of. So it'd be cool to see them dip further into that. But I just kind of know they might not, and that's okay. I think if I were to do this, obviously it's a lot of metal, but there's a lot of cool ways that you can, do metal. You can, contrast paint over metal to give like a colored look, sort of like what this guy has. Or if you just wanted to go like a standard metal and then use like their blades and their energy to give like new colors, I think it'd be an interesting way to do more of a kind of Skittles army with them, and maybe do something like this where you have two different tones of metal, where you have this like warm coppery color and this like kind of warm silver, almost like aged would that be aged copper? That gives it that like more silvery tone, maybe, almost like tarnished. Um, yeah, I mean, honestly, I think they have a for them to have so many different looking things like silhouette wise, they are still very cohesive, which I think is to like the designer's credit. Like that is really impressive that like it's such a wide variety of models, but they all look like they're from the same army. Like even this, if you had this in random colors and then you had like these guys, you could kind of be like, yeah, those are definitely the same army, which I feel like most armies have, but maybe not to the extent that Necrons do. But moving into orcs, so orcs I think would be a cool one to do for Skittles, but I think if I did do it, I might actually do orcs for Age of Sigmar instead, just so then I have a second game that I can play, and I prefer like fantasy orcs over sci-fi orcs, which would make you think that I would like these guys, so like the snake bites, which are more like fantasy in 40k, but I think if I'm gonna do fantasy, I'm just gonna go full swing into Age of Sigmar. But yeah, orcs I think is a fascinating 40k army. They do have one of my favorite models in 40k, which is Gazgul Thraka. I mean, just such a sick model. It would be so much fun to paint that. So that's on my like to paint list. But I don't think I would play orcs in 40k personally. And I think it has to do a little bit that they have some older kits and they have some newer kits, and some of the newer kits are like more of the monopose, so you don't get as much of the kit bashing fun out of them. And when I think of orcs and building them, I would want to do more of a kit bash look. Look at them. I mean, it is like all kit bash already, but to be able to kind of mix and match pieces from different kits and kind of customize stuff more to my liking, I think is what I would like to do. And it sounds like some of the kits don't allow you as much freedom for posing, which is just something that I would really prefer to have. But very cool, very like Mad Maxy. I know Ninjon here on YouTube is doing like Mad Max literal orcs, and that's looking really cool. I think it's a pretty sweet aesthetic to go after, especially if you're like trying to match like the movie orcs or the movie Mad Max, the newer one with like the painted faces and that sort of thing. I think it's a cool approach for orcs, and I think it would be a lot of fun. I think if I were to do it, I would probably lean kind of in that direction, or I would go more like Skittles, and it would just be a bunch of like colorful armor, and I would probably end up kind of grunging it up a bit too, like doing oil washes, streak and grime, and that sort of thing, just because that feels right with orcs. And I think that might be another reason I would lean more towards the fantasy orcs, because I feel like even though you could do like grime on the fantasy orcs, I think it would still look fine to not do that and have them be pretty clean. And I think that's more what I would want in my like Skittles army. So I've talked pretty at length with the last two with Tau and Tyranid, so we'll just kind of flip through these kind of quick. With Tau, I don't have much to say. I really do like the Tau. I like their aesthetic. I'm still working on my collection for these guys. I actually just got the Storm Surge, and I am currently working on it as we speak, because it is going to be my painting contest entry for this time around. So this is as far as I've gotten, but I did make the top actually magnetic, and it locks into 4 different directions. So I'm hoping that the magnets are going to be able to keep it steady whenever the actual rest of it is put on there. That's yet to be seen, but it's been a really fun model to build. So far, it's been the most stable ankles of any of the kits for Tau that I've built. But I do really like the Tau. I actually like the idea of the greater good. I think it gives the most ideal situation in the 41st millennia. In the original lore, to my understanding, it was simply that, but I guess it wasn't, people weren't really liking the fact that there was just a generally good faction. So they had to make it so like the ethereals might have some kind of mental influence over the minds of other people, and they're actually like brainwashing members of society to like join their cause and become part of the greater good, which is fine. I mean, you got to make it interesting and fit to what players want and that sort of thing. But from an aesthetic standpoint, if you like mechs and you like a lot of customization, Tau is a really good way to go, because you're able to basically build a full army of mech suits and have them all look they all look the same, but they can all have pretty different loadouts to give you a lot of versatility and that sort of thing. And then lastly is Tyranids. If you like just generic aliens with sort of dinosaur meets xenomorph meets insect, then these will definitely be your jam. Honestly, really great kits. I'm still working on painting my Screamer Killer Carnifexes. Really cool kit, honestly. Really holds up well. I actually have them right here. So this guy's like not even halfway done, but just a really, really cool kit, honestly. Lots of options. The Carnifex kit is like super old. It wouldn't surprise me if they update that kit sometime soon, which would be a little bit saddening, because I think that kit is actually really good. So I kind of hope that they leave it, because it just has so many options and a lot of ways to make each one unique, and it makes you kind of excited to have more than just the one box, because it's like I can have 4 boxes of Carnifexes and literally every Carnifex looks different. That's my personal opinion. But yeah, just in general, I really like the look of that. Look at the Tyranids. Super cool. The Norns are a lot of fun. I will say one interesting thing. So recently they teased or revealed that Tyranids is getting a new Combat Patrol box, which actually, now that I think about it, I don't think they have that. Well, I guess you can still technically get it out of the Ultimate Starter box, but oh yeah, they took down their Combat Patrol. Well, they just revealed the new one. And I was actually expecting them to put these kits in there. Maybe the Screamer Killer's a bit strong, but this has been out of stock for so long that I thought that it was maybe due to them like planning to put it into the Combat Patrol, basically to like save Sprue or whatever. But it's the Parasite Mortrex, 2 10-man squads of Gene Stealers, Hive Guard, which are these guys, or Tyrant Guard, sorry, which they're really cool. I really like them. I'm probably going to get a unit of them eventually. And then the leader is the Parasite Mortrex, which is a very cool model and a very fun one to use in battle, that allows you to spawn Ripper Swarms, which I just realized that if Combat Patrol lets you spawn Ripper Swarms, there's no kit in there that makes Ripper Swarms. So that'll be kind of interesting. I wonder if that was on purpose or if they're going to limit it in Combat Patrol to not be able to do that. But anyway, that is all the units for or all the factions rather for Warhammer 40,000. So yeah, I know we talked in the last video about getting started in the hobby, finding your faction, doing your codex. But before kind of all that, like getting your free mini, painting your first miniature, making sure that you enjoy the crafting side of the hobby. And I still believe that. I still wholeheartedly think that that's the way to go, because when you get your foot into the hobbying side of it, you really know like what you're about to get into. I mean, you're going to be building probably, you know, 50, 60, maybe even 100 models over the course of collecting to your goal. And it's just important to kind of realize that like a large aspect of this hobby is the building and painting side. And when you have to look at the models in gray and then in black and then in, you know, the colors and that sort of thing, you're going to have to be looking at the models for a very long time. And to know that you're looking forward to what they're going to look like when fully painted, I think is a super important part of the hobby. But what do you think? Do you think that, you know, it's important that you like the aesthetic of a faction, or are you more of just whatever is doing best in tournaments, or are you more of just a lore person? You may not like the way the models look, but you really like, you know, the lore side of them. Maybe you really adhere to one of the Space Marine chapters kind of ideals and their lore, and even though you don't like their colors, maybe you just are like, you know, I'm bought in, I really want to paint salamanders for X reason, or maybe you really like the Eldari and you want all of your aspect warriors to be the right color because it fits with the lore and it fits with exactly that. So what do you guys think? Do you think that you know, it's fine to have an army that you don't like the look of, or are you on my side where you know, aesthetics is more important and like lore and colors and whatever just kind of goes out the window, and as long as you think the models look cool, like that's what is the important thing? Just let me know in the comments below. And yeah, and I think maybe next week we'll have the reveal show this Friday if you're watching it before then. So maybe we'll just kind of talk about the reveals, what we're excited about, and what I'm looking forward to. If there's anything for armies that I like, or if it, you know, maybe they'll reveal the stuff for voting that makes me decide that that's going to be my, you know, colorful Skittles army, and I might start looking at collecting them in the near future. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you taking this, you know, just over an hour with me as we kind of scroll through and look through some of the different factions of 40K. But thank you guys so much, and I will see you guys in the next one.